Hello and welcome back to one more PixForce podcast directly from the OTC Offshore Technology Conference here in Rio de Janeiro. And now I have the pleasure of welcoming Jane Stricker, who will be talking to us a little bit of her work as Senior Vice President for the Greater Houston Partnership, and I would say almost as importantly, in her role as Executive Director at the Houston Energy Transition Initiative, HETI, which is working on this essential thing of making sure that we're not going crazy when we're going green, we're transitioning in a very smart and efficient way, bringing all players together. Thank you for joining us, Jane.
Thanks, Renato. So great to be here.
And Jane, if I may start taking a step back, not too far back, but your prior career before being involved in Houston, you were in the industry, right? So tell us a little bit about your role at BP and how you came to the oil and gas sector to begin with.
Yeah, so I came to the oil and gas sector really by way of convenience retail and marketing, which is an odd way. People always ask me, when did you know you wanted to be in the oil and gas industry? And I said, I didn't know I was until I moved to Houston about halfway through my career. And so it's been an amazing career, 20 plus years at BP, working on a broad range of issues in corporate finance, corporate governance, regulatory compliance. And then one of the last roles that I had at BP was really helping to lead a study on carbon capture, use, and storage with the U.S. Department of Energy. And that was really what sparked my excitement about the opportunity in the energy transition. And at the same time, right after we released that report, sort of all of these companies started aligning in 2020 around a vision to get to net zero and the need to prioritize the energy transition. And we titled that study The Dual Challenge. And I think 5 years on, I think that statement of the dual challenge of more energy and less emissions has probably never been more relevant than it is right now.
So true. And one of the things that for people who haven't been to Texas, I think the image we all have is like, okay, land of oil. And in reality, Texas is really a leader in new forms of energy, right? So in terms of solar, wind power, it really leads the US in that sector. So it's a surprising combination that many people don't realize is there. And Houston, being one of the world capitals for oil and gas, becomes then the epicenter of your current work. So tell us a little bit about, perhaps a little bit about Texas, but I think also the Houston aspect of it, because again, from someone who hasn't had the pleasure of visiting, I think it always strikes as somewhat of a surprise.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's still very much a reputation that Texas and Houston in particular are still very focused on the traditional energy businesses and what we call the incumbent industry.
Yeah.
And we 100% believe that those companies are critical and the people that work in those companies are critical. But Texas has also become the national leader in wind energy, the national leader in solar energy. We're now hitting new records in battery storage deployments.
Yes.
And in 2024 had more clean energy job growth than any other metro in the United States.
Wow,
and so it's really incredible to see this intersection of all forms of energy in Houston. And so that's why we say, we are in all of the above energy city.
Yeah.
And everybody says, oh, we need to be the energy transition capital. But I prefer to say we need to be the energy capital of the world in a changing energy landscape. And so, we all of these forms of energy need infrastructure. Yeah. All of them require big project development. All of them require engineering and the kinds of capabilities that this industry has been doing for decades.
Yeah, and one of the things that we know that I think for many people came as a surprise, and working with artificial intelligence at PixForce, we see firsthand is the massive energy demand that AI generates. So the consumption comes not only from the electrification of transportation, which is a growing sector in terms of energy demand, but also from AI itself. So I think when you say this complementarity it really is something that is part and parcel, and you can't do one without having the other.
Absolutely. I think people have this perception that Houston is a molecules city,
Yeah.
but more and more is becoming an electrons city as well. And that's that intersection of electrons and molecules.
Oh, I love that.
Where I think Houston has a unique advantage.
Yes.
And so it's been really interesting to watch the progression over the last 5 years. And the work really started from a place of how do we make sure we don't cede our advantage in energy, we don't lose our edge as the energy capital of the world as this energy landscape continues to change.
Brilliant. And that's one of the roles you have at HETI. That, I mean, would be probably the main one. So can you tell us a little bit about the work there? Because it seems quite ambitious, but at the same time, as you're saying, it almost comes as a natural inclination that if anyone's going to do it, if any municipality in the world can lead that charge in terms of a smart energy transition, Houston would be it. And that sounds like something that HETI is doing, was doing. How is that role? What exactly are you guys?
So it really started in 2020 when my chairman at HETI was the chairman of our organization, the Greater Houston Partnership. And for the first time in front of the entire energy business community and the bigger business community, stood up at our annual meeting and said, if we don't think about our role in the energy transition, we may find ourselves 20 years from now being the next Detroit or Pittsburgh, or pick your city that didn't see that fundamental change coming and then was on the back foot chasing. So as an economic development organization, our focus was really on how do we ensure the long-term economic competitiveness of this region through the energy transition. How do we make sure that we continue to bring great jobs and great opportunities into the region? And to your point on technology, one of the things that we knew is that the traditional energy companies, the incumbent industry, the Chevrons, the BPs, the Exxons, all of them are learning how, through technology, to do more with less resources. So even regardless of whether you believe that we need to transition fast or slow, we all know that in order to continue to create great jobs in Houston, in the energy industry, which enables so many other industries, we needed to think about how do we bring more new energy technologies, new energy companies into the Houston region.
And just a parenthesis here, Jane, because I think perhaps some of our viewership won't know, but I think it's amazing, right? So the electric consumption, for example, for an oil rig, it's massive. So when Jane's talking about how efficient they are, it's because they are efficient on their own use of energy, right?
Absolutely.
So it's something that doesn't come to mind, but that you've seen firsthand in your prior experience, right?
For sure. And our members that fund the work that we do at HETI are the energy industry. So all of our funding comes from companies based in Houston who have a focus on this issue and who want to make sure that they can find great talent, that they still have great jobs, that there are great opportunities, and that our economy continues to grow. And so we're funded by industry, but we bring together a coalition that is industry, it's academic institutions, it's government, it's community organizations, to really think about how do we make this ecosystem work for everyone.
And I think that's super valid, because we're not talking, again, going back to innovation, but I want to touch on what you're mentioning about this coordination of different sectors and how vital that is, because innovation inherently has to be a combination of both academia and industry and entrepreneurship. Many times the community has either approved that or will actually be the ones adopting it. So how do you see this I would almost say this challenge, because I don't think it's easy, because especially when we're looking at society, some parts of it need to understand from a very first principles basis what's at stake. So how can you do that in a manner where you're conciliating some super high levels of knowledge, lower levels, but then a massive ownership or a massive responsibility from a use perspective? So how is that possible without having to have a massive organization and thousands of people.
And we don't. We have a very small team. There are 4 of us total.
Oh my!
That lead the work at HETI.
You do pack a punch, though. I had no idea. That's the first time I heard about it. Even
we are a very small
HETI
team.
is everywhere when we're there.
But part of why we're able to do what we do is we leverage industry expertise on reports and projects. We leverage academic institutions to help us on studies. We leverage consulting agencies to help us, and so. It's really about bringing people together, and we call it convening for impact.
Yeah,
and so how do we convene the right groups of people to drive these issues forward?
Yeah, and I love the
really
words impact there because it's really, you want impact. You want, you want a result. It's not like
sitting
study,
around the room
it's not like guidance or white paper.
Sitting in a room and having a conversation is fine and interesting, but that doesn't move us forward. Correct. And so one of the things that we recently published a report on industry's decarbonization efforts, like you said, the efficiency, the things that are happening in the operations of these energy companies, these oil and gas companies. Since 2017, our member companies alone have invested over $95 billion into low carbon technologies.
Oh my.
And so for the folks in the audience who don't think this industry is committed to decarbonization and reducing emissions, we see the numbers, you know, and so it's been really interesting to take a look and then do case studies on what some of those companies are doing, what technologies they're using, you know, petrochemical facility along the Gulf Coast, partnering with BP to provide the solar power for that facility. And so there's so many unique opportunities to showcase what is actually happening.
Yeah.
Help industry understand what exciting new technologies are being developed across our universities and our innovation ecosystem, and really help create that bridge from idea or problem that needs to be solved to, you know, companies that are working at the forefront of innovation to connecting with the corporations that will have the resources to really scale those technologies.
Yeah, and I think this is one of the things that I find truly admirable from what the services we provide to our clients, like Petrobras, like what we're doing with Shell, and we see how there's an exchange. So when you're talking about coalition, there really is a lot of exchange within what would otherwise be competitors. So we see companies that their share prices are vying for the top. They want to be the most efficient. They want to be the most productive. But when it comes to certain issues which are of global interest, be it emissions, be it sustainability, there is this exchange. There is this opening the kimono, as you say in the US, where it's like, okay, well, we have nothing to hide here because your benefit is not my benefit directly, but it benefits the planet. Absolutely. So I think this is great when you're given that outline to remember that it really is a true coalition and not an exchange between one company and a few other players, but within the companies themselves.
No, I think that's a great point. And where we really try to focus is on the pre-competitive. What are the problems that if we don't solve them, no one moves forward? But if we do solve them, everyone has the potential to move forward. And so, you know, thinking about if we want to see CCS deployment scale in the Houston region, we have a huge opportunity there. But we need to understand what's the infrastructure that's going to be necessary to do that. And not for one project, but for broad deployment. And what are the right of ways, and what is the water demand? What is the electricity demand? We're talking about, you know, you've mentioned, you know, transportation electrification and then electrification of operations, but decarbonization of the industrial sector. You know, Houston is home, the Gulf Coast region is home to the largest footprint of CO2 emissions, stationary source emissions, from all of our industrial activity, petrochemical activity, natural gas processing, all of those things. And so how do we start to think about the implications of electrifying some of that, but also what are the other pathways that are going to allow us to decarbonize those industries?
And you know, it's fantastic because when you're talking about that, one of the things that comes to mind, Jane, and we work with a lot of the big players like Oracle, Google, AWS. We have different levels of partnership with all of them. So I don't want to put them on the spot because it applies for every single other industry. We see how the lack of standardization and dialogue creates a situation where you start to have pushback from communities which are like, no, the NIMBYs, right? Not in my backyard.
Absolutely.
When it comes to things like data centers, because oh no, but there's a humming, there's a trepidation, the consumption of water, the demand of electricity. So it's almost things that it's like if one of them had exchanged some of their success cases, some of their limitations, how much smoother could that have been? But they're just like looking at such a competitive landscape. They're like, no, this is our own learning experience. Let's leave it at that. Whereas we see the oil and gas time and again doing these interactions, and it becomes effectively one of the cleanest single industries globally, at least given the size of the industry.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So when we're looking at the number of people employed, the amount of money it moves, and then you look at what it means, be it from a contamination, be it from a leakage, it's like, no, every single leak is clean to the absolute best possibility of available technology, right. Not to mention what's prevented. So I think this is great to hear this success case and the continuous work you're doing there.
And I think there is a lot of learning for startups. When you're thinking about building a manufacturing plant for a new piece of equipment, or you're thinking about building a battery storage facility in a particular location, most of these companies, particularly the startups, they've never had to engage communities before. And in their mind, they think, well, it's clean energy, so everyone will want it.
Yeah.
We're not the oil and gas industry, so there's no reason
to find that buy-in, right? That local buy-in.
Right. And what we find is that they don't know what they don't know. And so part of what we do is really leverage the key experiences and learnings of what our energy industry has done well, and put together those frameworks and guidance for the companies that are just scaling up.
Yeah. And
here's how you do it with, here's how you engage communities effectively.
Yes, and I think Jane can speak with a lot of propriety on that, because during the introduction, one of the things I didn't mention, among other positions she has, she's also a director, a board director, right? A member of the board at Greentown Labs, where Pixforce is doing its soft landing. So as a member of Greentown Labs, our office in Houston, it's something quite essential. So when you're commenting that, I know it's coming not only from, I think this is how it should be done. It's like from a direct approach, be it from what you're doing at HETI, but also at Greentown Labs.
Well, yeah, there's a great example there too. Greentown Labs, when they opened that facility in Houston, and even the one in Boston, the safety protocols, when you have big lab space and you're working with heavy equipment and you're working with power tools and you have a wet lab, having as a startup to develop all of the safety protocols, Shell provided them all of the safety protocols that they needed to put in place to ensure safe operations at all of their facilities in Boston and Houston. And so, again, those partnerships between the startup ecosystem and industry just continue to yield really great opportunities.
Correct. And to be fair, right, Jane, I mean, Greentown Labs is one of the examples. So even though that's the one we applied for, we got accepted, we did look at others in the bigger Houston area. We have ION just next door. We know that there's, from university's perspective, also accelerators and incubators. So I think it's great that it's not the example. It's one example.
Absolutely. We have over 35 incubators and accelerators.
Oh my, I didn't realize there was that many. That's quite something.
And they support more than just the energy industry.
That's all the greater Houston area, not
in the
Texas.
greater Houston area.
Wow, amazing.
And not just supporting the energy and climate and energy transition area, but that supports life sciences, that supports aerospace. Yeah. And those are two other big priority industries for the Houston region. It also creates unique intersections between what's happening in life sciences and bioscience and what's happening in synthetic biology for energy. And so
I can imagine.
We get to see some pretty unique collaborations and startups.
Because one of the things that struck me significantly when I was in Houston for the first time was how it's also a hub for medical research and medical practice. So it's just an amazing city in that sense, where a lot of confluence of different things which are not directly related, or perhaps at least initially when we're talking about energy transition might seem to be in conflict, like, oh, the folks from solar are not going to like the folks from oil and gas, and wind is going to be against solar because they're more. It's like, no. Everyone is going to be inhabiting the same planet.
Yeah.
Just like in Houston, everyone's kind of like working in parallel, irrespective of sector.
Yeah.
And Jane, just going back a little bit to the technology side, because you're exposed to a lot of the best and brightest ideas.
Yeah.
Especially because if you want to get into the oil and gas market in the US, you go through Houston. And one of the things that I think many people might not realize, a lot of companies that do not operate in the US at all, there's no extraction, no refining in the US, they'll have an office in Houston for purchasing, procurement of solutions in Houston to take back to their home countries. So it really is a global hub for that. But in your perspective and seeing all of these technologies and vendors that go to Houston to position their products, is there anything that stands out? We see digital twins, we see IoT, we see a lot of AI.
Yeah.
Is there anything that's at least, be it more your favorites, or like if it was a bet from an investment perspective, you think that's the way to go? How do you see all these different fronts that appear in Houston?
Well, I'm always a little bit cautious because I don't want to give investment advice to anyone. But I do think we're seeing some really interesting technologies that are leveraging our traditional energy business to create new energy. And a perfect example is geothermal.
Yes.
And Houston is really becoming a hub of geothermal. And a lot of people will by now have heard the name of Fervo Energy. They are doing incredible work to leverage the technology that was developed by the oil and gas industry in the Permian Basin for fracking, and using that technology of horizontal drilling and multiple laterals to generate 100% clean base load power.
Wow.
By using that technology for enhanced geothermal. And so again, it's just a great example. Tim Latimer, CEO of Fervo, worked in the oil and gas industry, really passionate about the energy transition, said, I have to find a way to use this to do clean energy.
That's a fantastic example. So the output is actually electric.
Yes.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. The output is steam.
Yes, which is used for the, but brilliant.
Yeah.
And I asked that because at home, reside in Finland, where the crust is relatively thin. We have geothermal for home heating. But for the heat itself, so it's actually a heat pump.
Yes.
Right, it's exchanging with the ground. So this is fascinating that they're using this for the generation of electricity.
Clean baseload electricity.
Brilliant.
They've already got a partnership with Google to do a data center. It's either in Utah or Nevada, I can't remember which. But again, really great example of how this technology and their early investors came from the oil and gas industry.
Because they can understand the technological challenge and opportunity, right?
And they can see the supply chain opportunity.
Yeah, fantastic.
In a new pathway. Perfect example, one of their big investors was Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, who does the turbines. And so they made the investment in them, not only because they believe in the technology, but because it creates a relationship for supply chain for them to potentially provide turbines down the road.
And another company that is also in Houston, right? That has a massive office in Houston.
Yes.
So it really shows this symbiosis of being in this hub where so many different opportunities present themselves. Yeah, that's quite fantastic. I didn't realize that this enhanced geothermal was being used in that lateral drilling.
And we're really focusing on nuclear development in Texas as well, broadly. We've done a lot of work at the state level to develop a policy framework to enable small nuclear reactor development. And then Dow Chemical is doing a pilot project at their Freeport plant along the Gulf Coast with X Energy. And so there's some really interesting work happening.
Wow, fantastic.
In
really
nuclear
all sorts of clean energy, right?
We want all the energy in Texas. We want it all. And it's all welcome.
And it is all welcome, because I think perhaps 10, 20 years ago, a lot of people were talking about peak consumption in terms of energy, like, oh, LED lights are getting more efficient. I think it was back in 2011 or 2012 was the first time that the US GDP grew, but electric consumption stayed relatively flat and dropped. And people are like, oh, the efficiency, we're there. And then all of a sudden, no, electric vehicles start to come along. You start to have the boom around AI. And it's like, look, energy is going to be not only necessary, but we're needing more and more of it. So I think it's great, this approach, when you say, no, we're not discriminating. If it's clean energy, it's sustainable, they're welcome. And Houston is a good place to start.
And if it's commercial wins the day in Houston.
But that's brilliant. So on that, Jane, and we're getting to the end here, but I can't fail to ask this, because there is a lot of research and development that we hear globally that's done in academia, and that generates papers, generates new PhDs, and I think that's all fine and good. But when we're talking about this practical aspect, how do you see this being coordinated? And I know, of course, you're not intervening and saying universities don't do this or that, but how can you do the opposite? How can you try to make sure that the R&D is really geared towards something which is viable, not on a lab scale, not on that's going to be accepted by a paper, but that's industrial scale, and which is something we know that oil and gas is always looking massively. How do you replicate that in the energy transition and innovation more generally?
Yeah, I mean, I think most of our big energy players, particularly in the greater Houston region, have built over time very strong relationships with our academic institutions, and they do research for them, and they do collaborative efforts, and they recruit from them. And I think for the energy transition, it's really about getting industry to really describe what problems they're trying to solve. And so we're bringing together this collaboration between our academic institutions, our industry players, and our national labs to really think about how do we make that whole thing, that flywheel happen faster.
Oh, but that's super clever, because in a way, you're looking at the end goal and you're making sure that end goal is crystal clear. So it's not like, oh, go through this woods and you'll find the exits at the end. It's a bit like, no, this is the exit. Navigate the shortest path to it.
Right.
Okay.
Research for research sake is great.
Yeah.
And we should do that. We should always be doing basic research. But for this specific issue, we need to be researching with the goal of delivering scalable solutions for the energy transition.
And we know that we need it today.
Yes.
So it's not something, in 10 years' time, we'll see a demand.
Right.
This is the way things are going to be in 20 years. It's like, no, the quicker we can get that to market, the better.
Right. We don't need to be looking for markets right now.
No.
We need to be looking for solutions to markets that already exist.
So Jane, one of the things that a lot of people ask us at Pixforce, because today we have a presence both in Southeast Asia, we have clients and office in Europe, an office now in Houston, Greentown Labs. What's your words, be it of caution or encouragement, for entrepreneurs who are already successful in other markets? They're looking to the US. Many people contemplating Florida, California, Silicon Valley, New York. What do you think they should be looking at when they're scrutinizing? And I'm not saying pitch Houston here, but like, where do you think they should be paying attention to Houston, given what you have, which is an advantage compared to these other hubs?
Yeah, I think people have a tendency, early stage startups in particular, have a tendency to think that they need to go where the money is. And early stage money is often on the East Coast or the West Coast. There's more of it coming into Houston. We're seeing more venture capital and more firms coming into the Houston market. But the reality is you need to be thinking about who are your partners, who are your customers, who is your market, and focus on where you should be based on where you're going to develop those relationships. Those are the relationships you need to be on the ground building.
Yes.
The money will come from wherever the money needs to come from if you've got a great idea, right? Money is everywhere.
And it's not like it's not in Houston, right? So we know lots of corporate venture capital, that's there also.
But I think where you want to be is based on who are the relationships what are the relationships that you need to create? Who are the customers? Who are the suppliers? What does that look like for you and your business model as you think about commercial scale? And then that will determine where you should really invest your resources and your team's resources.
That's a super objective answer, because you didn't mention Houston once when you were talking about energy. But the bottom line is, if they look around, you see.
I think that's Houston.
Yeah,
So.
and I think there's a lot of sense if there's a link to clean energy, if there's a link to traditional energy sources. I think there's a lot of appeal. There's a massive port in Houston that people don't realize. One of the largest ports in the world is in Houston. So there's so many dynamics locally, not to go into the medical fronts and so on. It really brings together, I think, a lot of successful opportunities for both entrepreneurs, students, established companies, and so on. Jane, just in parting, a last question, and this is a bit of a hard one, but being here in Rio de Janeiro, I can't help but ask, when we're comparing our oil capital, which is Rio, it's not Sao Paulo, it's definitely not Brasilia, it's Rio de Janeiro, and we're looking at Houston, what stands out? And I'm not saying compare the two, but what do you see as the best here in Rio? What do you like about the city? What are the things that you say, oh, interesting?
I think the continued growth of the energy industry here is really exciting. I mean, you're building facilities, you're doing new exploration, you're putting new people in the workforce out in the offshore to develop more oil and gas. That's a growth story that we don't have in Houston today. So I think that's really exciting.
Nice.
What is also really exciting is just to see how fast the growth. I was here 2 years ago. I was here for Rio Oil and Gas last year. To see the growth in the innovation ecosystem here and to connect with the people that are working on that, it's incredible to me to see what IBP is doing, what ANP is doing through NAVE, all of these programs, what the folks in Rio are really focused on to support and grow that innovation ecosystem. I love seeing that.
Brilliant. And you really touched on some things which we think that from abroad wouldn't be something that you'd have on the tip of your tongue.
Yeah.
So I think that's great. And with that, again, this was Jane Stricker giving us a great insight into Houston. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much, Renato. I really enjoyed it.